Let me introduce Sanjay Vashist to all of the people who are here. Basically, he is a forester with graduation and post-graduation in forestry from India. He completed his master's in agroforestry from Gujarat Agricultural University and graduation in forestry from Konkan Krishi Vidyapeeth, Maharashtra. He has 14 years of experience in natural resource management and implementation of adaptation in key sectors and following international climate change discussions on various platforms for future climate change regime. To add a bit again to his very wonderful career in terms of climate action scenario, he is actually now the director of Climate Action Network South Asia, and is actively working in the civil society in relation to climate crisis, the climate policies in South Asian countries. Under his leadership, CANSA has increased its membership more than 200 plus, and the non-governmental organizations that have spread across South Asian countries. So the network has successfully documented the sectoral information, the climate impacts, and also the responses in South Asia. So Sanjay Vashist has been advisor to climate policy paradigm of Henrik Burrell Foundation in India, and he is the fellow with the Energy Resource Institute in New Delhi. And many more accomplishments to his credit. I now request Sanjay Vashist to kindly enlighten us on journey from Rio to Glasgow and lessons for the future. So Sanjay Vashist sir, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Dr. Tanapi. Thank you for nice introduction. This also, reminds me I need to update my profile. I have been active in, research and civil society space since 1998. So it's been almost 24 years now. And let me introduce Climate Action Network South Asia before let me also share my slides. I hope you all can see this.
Yeah. Go to the full slide view, sir.
Yes. So Climate Action Network South Asia is a global network with more than 1,500 organizations, NGOs as our member organizations in 130 countries. We are in South Asia as their representative in 8 countries, and we are more than 300 organizations now. So only NGOs who are working on climate change, they can become member. We don't have individual membership. And CANSA has been following climate negotiations. CANSA has been working on ground, implementing climate solutions along with communities, and also working with policymakers on providing technical knowledge to them. And one of the prime responsibility for us is to also spread awareness about climate change. What climate change is, what kind of phenomena it is, how dangerous it is, how to deal with it. So all that has been our phenomena. It's really honor to talk to, in my own fraternity, because I come from State Agriculture University. I studied in Maharashtra, then I studied in Gujarat. So it's really an honor to talk to the technical minds today. What I'm going to do in next half an hour or so is I'll present the journey from Rio to Glasgow. Rio was the one when UNFCCC, United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, was agreed in 1992. I'll touch upon the milestones in between, which was very crucial, and we cannot afford to skip them. Then I'll come on India, how India is implementing climate action, and then I'll conclude by sharing some lessons from on the global discourse, how we should see global discourse. So let me start with this graph of how the negotiations has been. So I'm going to speak for last 30 years, starting from 1992 to 2022, where we are. And 1992, Rio, everybody felt that there is some phenomena which is affecting our seasons, and we need to understand it. We need to start deciphering it, unpack it. So there was first assessment report of IPCC, and they said, yes, there is a phenomena called climate change. In fact, the term that was used at that point of time was also global warming, which was later on rectified to right term, which is climate change. So almost 154 countries agreed that we need a voluntary approach. We need to solve this problem, and the source is fossil fuels, and we need to stopping the use of or start phasing out fossil fuels. See, so the voluntary approach didn't work till 1995, 96, because nobody was doing anything. Everybody made a promise. And then in Berlin, everybody realized, oh, no, we need a legal commitment. We need to hold some countries accountable, and they should be able to, start the initiative followed by other countries. And then in Japan, in Kyoto Protocol was agreed in 1997. That's when developed countries, there was an annex with all the developed countries that was listed down. And these countries were told to reduce certain number of percentage of their global, their greenhouse gas emissions compared to a benchmark. And everybody was fine. Everybody was very happy when they left Kyoto Protocol. But then Kyoto Protocol was a political decision. It needed to be converted into an architecture, legal architecture that would ensure implementation. While Kyoto Protocol was, the politics was that Kyoto Protocol was ensured by President Bill Clinton, and after that,
we can't hear. There is no problem. I think it's a. I think the speaker, some network issue with the speaker.
Ramesh, you can.
I think we lost audio.
Maybe with some bandwidth issue, we may switch off our videos. Probably that might help.
I think he's disconnected, sir.
We can hear his voice.
Ramesh, you can call him, sir.
Any problem is there? Dr. Prabhakar is there already joined.
Can you hear me, Ilangon?
Yes, sir.
Okay, then I think
The problem is from Sanjay's side.
yeah, it looks like.
Someone can call him. Someone can please call him.
No, I have
Yeah,
called
he's
him
calling.
joining back. There was a problem with the laptop and he's joining back.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are some of the unintended problems with the webinars. We can't help it. We can't also do anything.
But anyway, sir, we are early now. 10 minutes we have gained because of not giving the break.
Yeah, maybe if somebody has called, otherwise we
he
can
has
maybe
joined.
start the.
Yeah, he has joined. He has joined.
I'm sorry about that. My
Yeah.
laptop suddenly crashed, so and I don't know. I need to figure it out. So basically, the 30 years journey has been two cycles. I'll put it this way. two cycles. First cycle has been agree on a global treaty, then you wait and prepare a rule book. After that, the rule book is almost when the rule book is complete, and then the legal enforcement of that treaty comes in force, and then after that you start implementing. So that has been the two cycles. We are in the second cycle, last stage. So as I said, this first bar shows the first cycle, almost first cycle, 1992 to 1997, UNFCCC, and then the top, basically a Kyoto Protocol was agreed. Then US refused to ratify Kyoto Protocol after ensuring that it is agreed between the countries, because President George Bush too said we don't want to be part of this treaty. And then after that, we waited till 2005 when Russia ratified, and Kyoto Protocol became a legal law. And then the implementation from 2005 till 2012, the implementation, and then again Paris Agreement was agreed in 2015. Then rule book preparation till 2020, and now we are in the process of implementing, Paris Agreement. So that has been the two cycles. I just wanted to present. So as I said, Rio was the one where everybody thought that it can be done voluntary. They realized in COP1, no, nobody is working on it. We are still missing the main objective of bringing climate change or stopping the climate change. Then legally binding commitment was agreed for almost 5.6% of global emissions was distributed among developed countries, basically industrialized countries who has been polluting historically. And then Marrakesh Accord in 2001 was when the rule book was agreed for Kyoto Protocol. And then, first meeting, it was done in 2005 when Kyoto Protocol became a legal law after Russia ratified. US remained outside of Kyoto Protocol. Then after that, the implementation, while the implementation was going on, there was a parallel work of also discussing the second commitment period. So that has been the cycle. Let me start my other slides, and I think I'll just share some of the details of the key milestones. 1992, UNFCCC, a bigger circle. Please visualize it as a bigger circle in which a Kyoto Protocol was a smaller circle within the convention. So it was agreed that there will be a global equity. Basically, developed countries will have the larger share of emissions and therefore should take the lead. And why? Because the industrial revolution in 1850, around 1850, when coal was being used as a major source of energy, since then, developed countries has been polluting, of course, they have been polluting out of ignorance. They didn't knew that it will cause climate change, but still, a crime has been there. It has affected the way we live. Climate change has affected our lifestyles, our livelihoods also, and that's why developed countries have to take lead. It was agreed in the convention. Global efficiency, cost effectiveness. The action will be cost effectiveness. It should not be too expensive. For example, moving half of the population to Mars or Moon could be very expensive compared to the cost of action we need to undertake here. Basically, we need to change our development trajectories in the most cost effectiveness manner. Third is precautionary principle: anticipate, prevent, and minimize cause of climate change. And basically, this is also applicable to those who work on disaster risk reduction: anticipate, prevent, and minimize. And that's the precautionary principle on which UNFCCC is anchored. Common but differentiated responsibilities and respective capabilities. Developed countries to take most responsibilities, because the common responsibility is that we need to stop climate change, but the respective capability is based on how much has been your historic footprint, how much is your income, in which income category you fall, whether you are least developing country or medium developing country or industrialized or developed country. And this is also related to global equity, that your share of responsibility will be decided accordingly. In fact, CAN South Asia has also part of a global consortium. We have also calculated the fair share of all countries in terms of the responsibilities they have. Well, that's going to be a different presentation in future. but I just want to share that we are basically, as Silsila been holding developed countries responsible for ambitious action. This is the second milestone, COP3 in Kyoto Protocol. Third conference of parties held in Kyoto, and that's when everybody realized we need a legal binding commitment. Voluntary will not work. So Kyoto Protocol had legally binding commitment, came into enforcement in 6 June 2007. 174 countries and one regional economic integration, basically European Union, they deposited instrument of ratification, and Australia and US decided to be out of it. And it came into force because, so there was a formula for any, even Paris Agreement, even for Kyoto Protocol, the formula was that at least 50% of the emissions, countries whose cumulative emissions are more than 50%, once they ratify, then the Kyoto Protocol comes into enforcement. So that happened when Russia ratified. Powerful, complicated, and taking. It was certainly a first step in the right direction. Not ambitious, we were not happy about it, but it was first step in the right direction. The Kyoto Protocol shares convention objectives based on principal institutions, and it was certainly an excellent moment in terms of unilateral, decision-making process. What did we achieve in the first cycle? By the time we finished first cycle of legal binding commitment, rule book, legal binding commitment coming into force, and then implementation. And that showed that out of 2 pillars, 1 pillar was very stronger, and the second pillar was, very weak. And that's what we need to look at later on. Reduction of greenhouse gases by Annex 1 countries or parties. And basically in greenhouse gas, methane is 1, carbon dioxide 1, nitrous oxide is 1. I'm referring to methane and nitrous oxide especially because they are linked with the agriculture sector. So they needed to be reduced. And there are 6 gases of that needed to be reduced globally. First commitment period 2008 to 2012, 4 years of implementation. Kyoto Protocol came into force, basically legally binding. So a protocol with teeth. There was also mechanisms. Mechanisms means, and this is also linked with cost effectiveness. You all must have heard about clean development mechanism. So that was one mechanism which we all know, and how technology transfer took place, and how funds basically there was more action in developing countries because of these mechanisms rather than developed countries. I normally blame these mechanisms as a coolie system or a porter system. So rather than developed countries lifting their own luggage as a burden, they hired developing countries to lift the burden or to lift that burden on themselves, and they took the credit of reduction. Clean development mechanism, joint implementation, emission trading. These are 3 mechanisms that came into force, which are part of the Kyoto Protocol. Future greenhouse gas reduction commitments. It also started talking about what will be the future greenhouse gas reduction commitment. So everybody expected that as soon as the Kyoto Protocol will finish on 31st December 2012, from 1st January 2013, second commitment period will start, which didn't happen because Paris Agreement came into force much later. It was agreed in 15 and it came into force in 2016. So certainly there was a gap of almost 4 years. So that was mitigation pillar. So certainly there was legally binding commitment, countries taking over responsibility, identification of countries who will basically take responsibility. So everything was done. What kind of mechanisms will ensure effective implementation? Everything was done. Adaptation. Dr. Govada also mentioned about adaptation. So let's see in after first cycle of climate talks where adaptation was. All countries need to adapt to adverse effects of climate change. A statement which is very generic, applicable to all, but no clarity on what does it mean in terms of adverse effects, what does it mean in terms of adaptation. Developed countries shall provide resources to developing countries to meet cost of adaptation. Didn't happen. Not at all. It was ODA that was recycled and that was being used for climate finance, for adaptation. And at that point of time, there was no green climate fund as well. So there was no separate climate finance mechanism in place. Forget about additional climate finance. no comprehensive mechanism, which would have, for example, today we have comprehensive mechanisms on adaptation. For example, there has been a levy of on coal, as coal says, within India, where money is being mobilized for climate change. There is a national adaptation fund within India. Globally, there is a UNFCCC adaptation fund, and then there is green climate fund, where 50% of money goes into adaptation. But at that point of time, I'm referring to this by 2012, or no, not even 2012, 2008, 2009, when the implementation started, there was nothing on adaptation. Existing funding mechanism was only three. Adaptation fund was created because CDM was giving some money, 2% of its levy, and that money was creating adaptation fund. There is a green, there is a Jeff Trust Fund, normally controlled by US, by the way. Least developing country and special climate change fund in UNFCCC, which is more, which had very less money and more to support least developing country rather than overall adaptation scenario. And of course, there was one stream which would have discussed how adaptation should be negotiated in future. That was long-term cooperative action, ad hoc working group on long-term cooperative action. Sorry about acronyms, but that is for my reference. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible, and I'm trying to put it into a story for all of you. Finance and technology, of course, runs across. Now that's the second cycle I'm referring to. So in 2007, the process this was the overlap period when Kyoto Protocol was going on. The discussion about second commitment period started in Bali, in Indonesia in 2007. And then everybody hoped that by 2009, there will be a second commitment that will be agreed into, and it will start from 2013. It didn't happen. So the original Bali process started from 2007 to 2009. And in Bali, in Copenhagen, where President Obama also visited Copenhagen, the negotiation collapsed. No deal was made. And then it was a post-recovery, post-reconstruction of Copenhagen. Copenhagen has been the blackest spot in the history of climate negotiations so far, where at the last moment when deal would have been done, it fell down because of higher political pressure and high-level political intervention. Cancun reconstruction, Durban reconstruction, and in Doha it was agreed, okay, by 2015 we will have an agreement and let's start working on it. And in 2015, Paris agreement was agreed. And what does Paris agreement says? Well, Paris agreement, what are the reflections? It talks about the first time that we need to keep temperature well below 2 degrees. In fact, we need to continue efforts to limit below 1.5 degrees. The temperature goal started reflecting into, and these temperature goals, these mechanisms play important role globally because they are the one which actually guide countries to prepare their national plans as well. It was first time that it was agreed in that 2020 to 2025, in the ongoing period, rich countries must provide $100 billion from 2022 as a flow and amount to be updated in 2025. Next month, I'll be in Bonn, and I think one of the main objective in Bonn negotiation is talk about global stocktake, and finance is one among them. There need to be a collective finance objective that need to be agreed globally, and then this will be distributed among countries. Differentiation, countries must take lead. So there are two set of countries, that's how I see it. One, countries who cause the problem. Second, who are going to cause the problem if they continue to use fossil fuels. And developed countries needed to make sure that the problem they have caused, they rectify it, and they also make sure that those countries who are following their development trajectory, they also deviate to the cleaner pathways. So differentiation is one among them. For example, India never wanted to be seen standing along with US, China, or Australia, or European Union, or Japan, or Canada, because the US, European Union, UK also, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, Japan, they all are polluting countries. They are all polluters. And nobody wants to be seen standing along with the culprits. those who have caused the crime, nobody want to be seen standing in the same box. So differentiation is must, and differentiation need to be applied by capacity, by historic responsibility. I mentioned it earlier also. And this is a very crucial aspect of equity also. The Paris Agreement also says that of course, this Paris Agreement is till 2030. While we are implementing action till 2030, countries also need to prepare a long-term strategies till 2050. And that's where that was part of the Paris Agreement. Burden sharing. Developed countries must provide financial resources, and other countries can provide support on a voluntary basis. So, but this is the differentiation also. Other countries include developing countries, and developed countries are, I mentioned earlier also. Review mechanism. It's not that we will look at the how much we have achieved in 2029 or 2030. There will be a review mechanism which will start from 23 till 25, and then countries will be asked to revise their NDCs again. India has already committed net zero by 2070. Our Prime Minister committed it in Glasgow. India's major 4 emission reduction targets till 2030 are 2.5 to 3 billion tons CO2 equivalent sink. So all the vegetative cover we need to create, it should be able to absorb 2.5 to 3 billion ton of CO2 from the atmosphere. That's first. Second is that countries that our energy intensity will be reduced by almost by 35% by 2030. Our 50% of electricity will come from renewable energy by 2030. So these were objectives that we put on. But then Prime Minister Modi has also committed internally to its own public that while we have given less number globally as a commitment, internally we are committing much more to ourselves. And let's see if that works. And that includes 450 gigawatt of renewable energy to be achieved, added by 2030, from 2022 to 2030. That's a very huge target that India has put forward. Climate change. Vulnerable countries have won recognition of averting, minimizing, and addressing losses suffered due to climate change. Because loss and damage has not been recognized so far. It was in Paris Agreement. It reflected that yes, loss and damage scenario need to be dealt with. And I'll give you some examples of loss and damage. Loss and damage would mean 2 islands that has submerged into Sundarbans. Almost more than 100 households has been shifted from those islands into other islands. That's relocation, but then the permanent losses of those islands are the loss and damage. Similarly, if there is a land on a coastal area and now the salinization is increasing because of high wind velocity, there cannot be any crop yield there, that's permanent loss. How do we relocate farmer who has been cultivating there for ages to other land? Which land we provide? What do we do about this land? So these are the permanent losses. In fact, there was also a situation, and that was of course certainly a political hype. Once Maldives, Maldives, started looking for land outside, its own island in other countries. They said we want to buy land in other countries where we can relocate our people, but because there's going to be permanent losses to our islands, our tourism is affected, and we cannot survive this way. If our islands submerge, where do we move? We cannot live in water. So that way, the questions, and look at the impact of loss and damage, the questions about sovereignty of Maldives arises. Questions about whose passport will they hold? Whose currency will they use? Will a country give a land, sell a land completely to Maldives, demarcating it as that country, or will they be part of this the country where they want to buy land? So these are it opens a lot of Pandora's box. There are also non-economic losses like heritage lost, like culture lost. So certainly there is a door in the foot in Paris Agreement where loss and damage is being discussed. This is how in 2016 on 4th November the Paris Agreement was agreed, it was ratified. And let me also tell you, look at the date, 4th November. 7th or 8th November, President Trump was elected. So President Obama made sure before he leaves, his office, that Paris Agreement comes into force. Of course, US also ratified, and later on, President Trump submitted that we want to withdraw from Paris Agreement, which took another 4 years. But by then, President Joe Biden came into power and he withdrew that application. Now, what has resulted into this 30 years of work, 30 years of negotiations? If you look at the above graph, the arrow in orange, dark orange, this is the pre-NDC scenarios. If countries would not have committed GHG emissions reductions, then the temperature, then it would have gone like this. So the reduction has been able to bend it here. Not much, marginal, but significant. Now it need to go much, this graph need to bend much below in terms of greenhouses being emitted in the atmosphere. In fact, it should start negative by 2050. 1.5 scenario is green and blue is 2 degree temperature scenario. And look at the heat wave now in North India. We are expecting 46, 47 degree temperature tomorrow in Delhi. And that's very unprecedented. Now, look, this is when global average temperature rises 1.2 degree. If it goes to 3 degree or 4 degree, imagine the kind of heat we are going to face or intensity of cyclones we are going to face. So that's what the negotiation have been achieved. The road from Rio to Glasgow has been able to achieve. Last year, Glasgow COP was more about finalizing the carbon market mechanism for Paris Agreement, and now the implementation has started. Now, this is how it looks like in future, from now till 2025, 3 years after that. 2016, forget about all the above terms. I just took this graphic to show you the year. 2016, Paris Agreement has been ratified. 17, 18, 19, 20, even 21 was to prepare a rule book. That means how the countries need to report back on their commitments, how the market mechanisms will work, how they will be monitored, how the finance will flow, how the additional finance will be mobilized, all that. And from next year, the global stocktake starts till 2025, when countries will be asked to revise. Because as of now, if we combined all the greenhouse gas emission reductions by countries, we are still heading somewhere around 3 degree temperature goal, and we need to bring it to 1.5 degree. So countries need to commit much more than what they have committed. The fact that everyone has given this time to countries to start implementing, because everybody is hopeful by 2024, countries will realize that implementing climate action is much easier than what they are thinking, and will give them a lot of confidence. And there will be a lot of investment into energy sector also, renewable energy sector also, that will give them confidence, and that may encourage them to commit much more. India on climate agenda at home. How much time I have, Dr.
Another 10 minutes, sir.
Okay, sure. That's fine. Thank you very much. So India on climate agenda at home, despite its low per capita GHG. So India's per capita GHG emissions is only 2.1 ton per year, not much. But then also remember, within India, there is rich class, there are poor class. So that way there's a huge difference. So we certainly need to start working on ensuring that our rich reduce their carbon footprint and poor doesn't increase their carbon footprint. India is the 4th largest GHG emitter in the world. Why so disparity? Low per capita, but still 4th largest GHG emitter, because we are 2nd largest society in the world. So even if we, I normally consider emissions into 2 categories. One is survival emissions and one is luxury emissions. If we total the survival emissions 2 ton, then also cumulatively our per annual emissions will be much higher, 1.44 billion compared to 300 million people in US. So just to give you a comparison, US per capita emissions are almost around 25 ton per person per year. India is 2 ton per person per year. China is now 9 ton per year per person. India is 2 ton. Germany 11 ton per year per person. So these are the disparities we are looking at, developed and developed countries. It is a lower middle income country and the only emerging economy in that country group. When I say country group, that means G20 country groups. It's one of the emerging economy, and it has charted an ambitious climate agenda in the form. So this is, for example, 20 to 25% carbon intensity by 2022, and I should have added by 2023, 35% carbon emission intensity reduction. So India, this is what India has committed. 175 gigawatt to renewable energy by 2022. This year, we are somewhere around 90 gigawatt already, but 450 gigawatt by 2030 is our target. 10,000 gigawatts energy saving through energy efficiency. That's part of a solar plan also, creating natural sinks through afforestation. What are the challenges that need to be addressed? Upgrade of obsolete technologies like grids that can receive energy from diverse sources. As of now, the technology is such that it can receive energy from hydro and from thermal. What about smart metering in urban areas? If I want to install a rooftop solar and I'm not at home, not using, and my rooftop is generating electricity, can it go back into the grid? So smart metering, and that's why grids need to be compatible. Similarly, if there is a farmer who want to, on the coastal area, want to install 2 wind turbines and want to sell electricity as additional income and also want to contribute into energy security, can our grid accept it? No. When the grids are shut down, that energy goes away. So there are a lot of technological upgrades that are required. Technological solutions like smart metering that can encourage entrepreneurs in promotion of renewable energy, changing the mindset of consumers. I remember when I started working on climate change in 2002, first question that came to my mind is, oh, now we will stop getting electricity from wires. We need to have solar panels on rooftop, that we will not have rooftop and we have to clean it every day. That's a non-starter for a consumer. And that's why that's not the case. Technology has improved. They are more advanced, and we need to inform consumers about it. Investments into clean source of energy, and for which even policies need to be welcoming investment. As of now, there are a lot of barriers here. Energy transition from fossil fuel-based infrastructure to renewable energy-based without compromising our growth and development. That's the key. We do not want our economic growth percentage to go down, and we want to move from one energy infrastructure to advanced energy infrastructure for future without affecting our growth. We do not want that our effort for no poverty are reduced because of transition. We do not want house needs are compromised because of transition. We do not want nutrition becomes an issue among our poor population because of transition. We want all that to go along. So threat running against time, temperature, IPCC has already said it's almost 10 years or 8 years now actually. NDC enhancement is priority, and it was agreed in COP24, again reiterated in COP26. Public finance has not delivered the quantum of finance. And I'll come on why, I think that, what are the lessons, and that will be my last slide. New, additional, predictable, and sustainable is perceived in the context of historical responsibility. There has to be new money. There has to be additional money. It should be predicted. I should know how much money is going to come in next 5 or 10 years. And it should be sustainable also. It should not go up and down. I remember that many of the developed countries who are investing into developing countries now, they are planning to reduce the money now because they want to invest in Ukraine because of war efforts. Now, that's not sustainable. So certainly, we need sustainability here. And polluters should pay. If we fail new and additional, then we will be ending up buying geoengineering technologies in overshoot scenarios. Let me share my lessons learned. Unfortunately, the first lesson is from Rio till Glasgow, we have engaged culprits in making law. Developed countries are responsible for causing this problem, and they have been involved in decision making. Basically, they are part of the negotiations to decide how they should be punished. And of course, culprits will never let law take its shape, and that's why the 30 years process The process has been slow, but then the co-benefit of the climate negotiations or climate talks has been that within countries, countries has been working on national policies now everywhere. India, National Action Plan, State Action Plan, District Climate Action Plan, missions, National Adaptation Fund. So much has come because India has to, show how progressive they are, and India has been working very, aggressively in taking up its own responsibility. In fact, as of now, what India has committed much more than its own fair share. Global climate talks add to momentum, but India needs to be self-sufficient in taking action. If we are waiting for money to come from developed countries, no, it's not going to come. It will be very less money. We have to learn to generate our own money because our survival is at stake. Climate impacts like cyclones, cyclone Asani impacting Bay of Bengal, drought, floods, see what has happened in Kerala. So all that affects our, whatever the developmental gain we make, it gets washed away. So it's our survival. If there's no money coming from developed countries, we can hold them, we can blame them, but it's us who are suffering. So we need to build our own resilience. We need to fund action on ground. Transition for energy security is important, and we need to reduce our dependence from fossil fuel, which has been around 125 billion of bill last year. We are importing from outside. It is in our interest to save this money that can be used for health, that can be used for sustainable agriculture, that can be used for infrastructure building, etc. So, transition for energy, all that we have to do it on our own. Nobody is coming to our help. Let me tell you that. Global climate finance or trade advantage. Even if there is a global climate finance that's going to come from bilateral sources, there will be some quid and pro to give them some trade advantages. And remember, nothing is free. If you think that you're getting something free, I mean, there's been saying you are the product. So here, our trade advantage will be compromised if we rely totally ourselves into global climate finance. We should take money, but we should also hold our ground on self-sufficiency, and that's the key. Energy transition and opportunity, not a burden. The fact that we are going to move from fossil fuel to renewable energy soon, it's not a burden. It's not that we have to do it because global community has asked. It's an opportunity. If we do it faster, we can start selling technology outside to others. We can start selling, models to others, and we can be front runner into making sure how energy security from renewable energy has been done. So far, Germany has been one of the lead in energy transition. Economic value triggers real action. For example, what is the economic value of a forest? Or if we say that what is today, when we communicate to people that climate change is coming and so many people will die, that's fine. But the day we tell them that so much percentage of GDP has gone down, and this has been the economic losses, people understand its gravity, and then the real action. So that has been my learning. Economic value triggers real action, even if it is not seen in an economic manner, but always try to show it. It's easy to communicate, honestly. Developing countries are different, and this is one in the context of agriculture sector. Dr. Govda mentioned about small and marginal farmers and adaptation needs. In the climate negotiations, when the two set of countries meet, developed and developing countries, there has been fight. There has not been any, legal agreement on agriculture. And why? Because developed countries see agriculture as source of emissions. Developing countries see this as a vulnerable sector because they are small and marginal farmers, while developed countries do not have small and marginal farmers. They are all industrialized big farmers. They use mechanized farming, and that's why their emission carbon footprint is much higher. Both the methane because of cultivation, nitrous oxide because of excess use of fertilizer, but also the energy used within that sector. While in India, the small and marginal farmers are not dependent so much on energy use, and then also their dependence on fertilizer is limited. And that's why agriculture has been one. And in fact, we have done a paper, role of agriculture in climate change. I can share that with you all. Please go through it. Certainly, developed and developing country perspectives are different, and sometimes it leads to confrontation and disagreement in the global discourse. So I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Sanjay Vashist. It has been a wonderful account of journey that has happened from Rio to Glasgow.
Yes.
And we really wonder how the survival emissions and the luxury emissions are going to contribute and how we are going to control them. And in fact, the difference in the kind of emissions that are coming with the developed and developing countries, 2 to 25 tons, it's a huge, but somehow who will pay for it is also an issue. One question quickly, there is in the chat box. It says, Shailendra Kumar has asked, most global climate funding is still focused on mitigation, very little on adaptation. Moreover, major part of these climate funds are given as loans. That defeats the purpose. What do you suggest to Government of India and other developing countries and other actors to enable the access to climate funds meaningfully?
Green Climate Fund, which with headquarters in Seoul, their commitment is 50% money will go to adaptation and 50% to mitigation. That's one. And they are not facilitating loan. If you reach out to JICA, Japan Corporation, then of course they give loan. GIZ money is not loan. Hello? GIZ,
please go ahead.
German corporation is not loan. There has been a deal between India and Germany recently about 10 billion euros by 2030 to help India reach net zero, which has combination of both soft loans, but then also the funding. So adaptation is receiving money for sure. Let me also tell you, 400 crore has been earmarked in the national adaptation within India. This is a national adaptation fund administered by Ministry of Environment and Forest and Climate Change. It has triggered a lot of action on ground. State action plan implementation is being done through them. Globally, the adaptation money is coming from IDRC, Canada. No loan, it's a grant. Green Climate Fund for sure. There's a UNFCCC adaptation fund which gives money, which has so far a limit of $10 million US per project per country. That's it. But we are hoping once the Paris Agreement implementation starts and this carbon market starts, there is a levy that will start, filling in the coffers of adaptation fund, and there'll be more money flowing in. There are loans, but ADB gives loan, the World Bank gives loan. And that's where we need to negotiate hard, for sure.
Yeah, one last question.
Ji.
Focus on CDM was on reduction in emission and not much on carbon sequestration. So do you think this trend continues as now also? What is the level of focus in creating and maintaining carbon sinks, forests in particular?
Yeah, so CDM focus was actually on emission reductions, how much your project reduces emissions. Natural sink or maintaining natural sink was being discussed there as in the Red Plus as a possibility, but it didn't materialize in CDM. But it's going to be there in the new clean development mechanism, because many countries have committed maintaining sinks or increasing the sink also, and that's where it's going to reflect. I'm sure, but the biggest lacuna in methodology of sink is today, if a country gives money to let's say India and says you need to maintain this much sink, we'll pay you this much every year at the rate of so and so carbon credits. The problem is what happened when there is a fire outbreak in the forest, whether India will return the money back because they failed to protect it, or because that all captured carbon will go into atmosphere. So that's where methodology gap is there, and everybody is trying to work on it. There is no target for methane emissions. The methane emission is normally CH4 is normally converted into carbon dioxide equivalent, and that's when countries are committing how much they.
Yeah. So thank you very much, Sanjay Vashist. I think now we are hard pressed for time. Probably we will be connecting back to you. Maybe we can discuss in length on a special session on this particular discussions. Sure. And when we prepare the action plan, probably your advice and guidance should be of
always.
So thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.